Hi, you're listening to It Happened to Me, a rare disease and medical challenges podcast. The mission of our podcast is to support you, our listeners, and to create community as you confront the toughest challenges in life. All of us will experience health hardships. The real question is how we adapt. That's the focus of It Happened to Me, which wants to help you overcome limitations and live a full and satisfying life. Drawing on their own health challenges, co-hosts Cathy Gildenhorn and Beth Glassman interview guests who share stories and research to help you succeed in the face of difficult health obstacles. It happened to me. I'm not alone, and neither are you.
Last episode, number 44, Zach opened up about his experience and his mother's donation of a kidney to save his life. The episode prior to that, number 43, his mom shared her side of the experience as his donor. We highly recommend that you listen to these episodes prior to listening to this one. In this episode, Zach opens up about his experience losing his sight in his late 20s. That was caused by an acute instance of brain inflammation, which led to a stroke in his eyes, causing him to lose much of his vision. After recovering from his physical and balance-related challenges, Zach has been able to adapt to his new way of living, returning to work full-time and enjoying some newfound hobbies like blind baseball and disability advocacy work. He is now the director within the finance organization at Harry's Inc., where he has served in various leadership roles within the finance department. And that is where we left off. Zach, can you tell us about your experience at NYU's business program and how your internship really kicked off your career?
I actually ended up going to an undergraduate business school. So NYU has a business school. They do graduate programs. They also offer pretty much the same curriculum to undergraduates. So I was able to get a business degree coming right out of undergrad. And then through that was fortunate enough to get an internship at a management consulting firm my junior summer at a firm called FTI Consulting. So loved it. Thought this is like the perfect way to start my career. It's a field where you're constantly having to learn about different types of businesses and industries and solving different types of business problems. And the specific practice I was working for, it was figuring out how to solve different problems in a finance organization. And that ability to be like constantly learning something new in different environments and being challenged was extremely exciting to me. And so, yeah, loved. So started full time once I graduated from school, and worked with that firm for right around seven or 8 years, starting from intern all the way through to where I ended as a senior director within the CFO advisory practice there.
Wow.
Perfect. And then you met someone special there.
Yes, I did. So
now we get to the juicy part.
Yeah, absolutely. So I met my now fiance Jess in 2016. She started a year after I did. She went to business school at Emory University, and we were always really close friends. We sort of had this amazing crew of generally similarly aged, but very much just like an amazingly connected group of individuals. And she was very much part of that sort of unit that we developed. And I had like a very strong aversion to dating a coworker. So like, there was always a physical attraction, but like I very much was not comfortable with pursuing that. sometimes that's life, and there are forces at play that we
That's
don't
right.
understand. So
That's it.
once the romantic piece of the equation introduced itself, it was
Meant to
I
be.
mean, it was the easiest thing in the world. It was
Oh,
Oh, that's beautiful.
it's
yeah.
beautiful, Zach.
So
Oh,
yeah,
but
we
then you changed jobs and tell us about Harry's. And did that make it easier with Jess to pursue the relationship there? Or
absolutely.
was that
So
already done?
no, so you know, I loved my time in management consulting. I think for, you know, the 7 or 8 years that I was there, I was learning every single day.
Mm,
But it got to the point where, you know, it's a very demanding career. I was working 60, 70, 80, even more than that hours a week at some points. And I was at the point in my life now where I had someone that I wanted to spend all of my time with, and
yeah.
not be so you know, constantly you know, exhausted and having to prioritize work. I wanted to prioritize Jess. I wanted to prioritize, you know, starting a family. So those were my, you know, personal desires. And then professionally, I found a great fit actually at a former client, which is Harry's. So
That's so great.
personal care brand. And so started in a full-time role working with them just about 2.5 years ago.
Oh, wow. Well, then you and Jess take a vacation to Madrid. And how are you feeling and what happens on the trip?
It all sort of started in the beginning of May. You know, first it was a little bit of hearing loss. So I saw an ear doctor. They sort of gave me a nothing diagnosis. And then a couple weeks later, I noticed my first vision changes, but it was an acute instance. And then a week after that is when we traveled to Madrid. Um, and so it started then with some tingling in my fingertips. I had lost a lot of my appetite, which for me is very abnormal. And then the tingling then started to spread into my arm and into my torso. And then from there, we called my we called the ear doctor, and he basically said, like, you could be having a stroke and you need to go to a
Mm,
hospital right now.
mm,
So that was pretty shocking. We then
yeah.
called my my uncle Jordan, who's an emergency room doctor, and basically we were on the phone for like an hour, and he was basically trying to do like an over the phone stroke test, and
Yeah.
he was basically like, Zaki, I don't think it's a stroke, but whatever is going on is really serious, and you need to get to a heavy duty hospital like as soon as possible. So I think you need to
Mm-hmm.
like get on the next flight home. Um,
Mm-hmm.
So we move up our flight plans. At that point, the tingling then had started to spread into my leg, and I was
Mm.
really struggling to even walk. Like
Oh.
we were gonna try to get a bite for dinner that night, and it was really hard to walk. We were flying out first thing in the morning, so um, we wake up and get ready to go to the airport, and my vision is looking very blurry.
Mm.
I'm barely able to walk. I remember thinking like, how am I gonna like? There's stairs in the lobby that you need to walk down to get to the exit. How am I
Oh.
gonna like get down those stairs? How
Oh.
am I gonna get my suitcase down? And
Oh.
fortunately, we make it into a taxi and we get to the Madrid Barajas airport, and I can't read the signs. I
Mm.
speak Spanish, but just doesn't speak too much. So she was counting on me to figure out where do we need to go,
Sure.
and I couldn't read it. And that was really the first, I think,
Oh my goodness.
moment that I knew, okay, this is like something
This
is
is bad.
really,
Is
really
really
wrong.
happening.
And
Yeah.
I think that was like the first time I really started to like freak out internally.
Uh-huh.
We literally somehow make it to the gate. I was basically using my like carry-on suitcase, roller suitcase, as a crutch in one arm and like
Mm.
holding on to Jess in my other arm to
Oh.
get to the gate. And we get to the gate, and the gate agent sees me and is like, is he okay? Like, and is talking to Jess, like, is he okay to fly? And Jess looks at me like, dude, like, are you? And I was like, yes, like, we need to get on that plane.
Uh-huh.
And I think if we had not gotten on that plane, I don't think I would be here right now.
Yeah, I don't know what
Wow.
would have happened. I don't know what would have
Oh.
happened.
So we fortunately make it back. We went straight to the hospital. And by the time I get to the hospital, like I can barely walk. Like again, like I'm using the suitcase, I'm using Jess. We try to get a wheelchair. And yeah, that was the start of it. So
So, Zachy, you go straight to the hospital. You go straight to the hospital. You can't walk. You can't feed yourself. You can't take care of yourself. You can't hear. You can't see. What was that like, Zach?
yeah, so
What
pretty
was that like?
pretty quickly the symptoms progressed. So
Yes.
the vision was continuing to get blurrier. My hearing
Oh.
was getting worse and worse and worse. And after about like a day and a half in the hospital, I could barely move.
Oh.
Oh.
But I would say like I got to the hospital and something in my head was like, okay, you did your job and now you've gotten yourself where you need to be and now you need to rely on everyone here
Yeah.
to figure this out. And that was very much the mindset I adopted, especially as like the hearing was getting worse, the
Yeah.
vision was getting worse, because at a certain point, like I couldn't really hear anything unless you like screamed into my ear, and I really couldn't see anything that way. I had probably had like 10% vision. And so
Oh.
my like what I told myself was like, your job now is just to like stay positive and
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
whatever you got to do, sing songs to yourself in your head or visualize whatever you need to do, but like you need to just trust that like the people here are going to figure this out. And so about like maybe 20 hours worth of MRIs later, 3 spinal taps, I don't know how many blood tests and urine tests, a PET scan. We finally made the decision to do a biopsy of my brain to truly suss out what was going on. Meanwhile, my family, Jess, my mom, my support network was there, and they're getting like conflicting thoughts, ideas from all the physicians. The um, neurologist would come in and say, we think this is a cancer. The cancer docs would come in and say, we think this is bacterial meningitis. The basically infectious disease doctors would say, no, this is a neurological thing. So they were getting a complete runaround. And, in a lot of ways, this entire experience, especially in the hospital, I truly believe the hospital experience was so much harder for my family than it was for me, because I could just check out. And you hear a lot about folks who have come on this podcast talk about, you have to just at that point do whatever you have to do mentally to keep yourself alive and to keep yourself in a mental state that
Yeah.
isn't going to completely freak out or shut down. And that's where I went. And it took Jess, her father, who is a pediatric intensive care unit doctor, and my mom basically advocating the hell out of what was going on, pressing every single doctor, pressing every single nurse to do every last thing to try to figure out what was going on. And I strongly believe I also wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for um, the support and dogged approach to keeping my keeping me alive. for those.
But Zach, while they were advocating for you, we just heard words from a hero. You kept yourself positive. You kept yourself in a position that they could help you. You never gave up. Those are the words that we're hearing.
I think for me,
remarkable, Zach.
It's remarkable. Totally.
I appreciate that. I think for me, I just knew that like this isn't it. Like this can't be it. I think after the first couple days, we sort of were able to generally like I would say like the first 48 hours, like I thought I was gonna die. Once we found out it was not bacterial meningitis and it was not certain cancers, I thought, okay, like I am gonna live and we're gonna figure this out. And yeah, it quickly became like, you guys do whatever you got to do. You can do 10,000 spinal taps or whatever, like truly, like do whatever you got to do, figure it out.
Right.
And like, let's go.
Well, was the hospital able to give you any answers ultimately as a result of all these tests?
Oh, yes and no. So fortunately, we survived the brain biopsy, which itself was a risk, but that provided us with concrete support that this was brain and spinal cord inflammation. So that was the first diagnosis. We still didn't know what was going on with the eyes. We didn't know what was going on with the hearing. We thought the tingling and the inability to move was a result of that inflammation, but we still had some more diagnosing to do. So that was the first answer we received.
Was there any treatment, or did you go straight into rehab?
Yeah, so once we confirmed the brain inflammation, which is also referred to as encephalitis, the treatment is a very heavy dosage of steroids. So immediately we started on an infusion of steroids. And I would say pretty quickly that started working. So I would say at its worst, my vision was probably like 10%, I said. It's sort of improved to like 30-ish%. My hearing went from about 5% to, I would say it started to progress and progressively get better. And so I was in the neurological unit for all said and told about a month. And then after the month, I was able to then transfer to the rehab unit of the hospital to kick off, basically kickstart the rehab process. So I went into rehab, honestly, very excited. I just wanted to get going. So it at the same time was so the hospital experience for the first month was incredibly challenging. Anyone who's been to a hospital for an extended stay knows that like if you get 3 or 4 hours of sleep at night, that's like a good night's sleep. There's constantly noises, you're constantly being picked and prodded, blood test here, urine test there, blood pressure there. And so on top of the fact that like I couldn't move, I had to go to the bathroom in a bedpan every single time. I had to have someone feed me every single meal. Just the like complete and utter like inability to do anything for yourself is a really just like uncomfortable place to be. Yeah. And so going to rehab where the entire focus was like, okay, you're going to spend whatever it was, 3, 4, 5 hours a day to try to like fix this and get yourself better. For someone like me that wants to like take control and control what I
Yeah.
can control, it was
Yeah.
like a breath of fresh air. So
Uh-huh.
I
But how was it learning how to do everything all over again?
um incredibly frustrating.
Mm.
I would say so. There was really two pieces. There was the physical recovery that was required, and then there was sort of like the occupational adaptation recovery. And I would say the hospital was pretty amazing, or at least the rehab hospital, in helping me along the way with both of those things, in particular with the physical. So it started with literally having to learn how to walk again. At
Mm-hmm.
first, when I started in the rehab hospital, you would literally need like two large, I mean, I'm a big guy, so like I literally needed two large nurses or attendees to help me even stand up. And even then, like I developed something called ataxia, which is basically just like a severe tremor, and I would shake
Mm.
uncontrollably. And so
Mm.
the amount of physical therapy that was required to basically train my body again, not even just walking, but to stand up straight,
Mm.
and build back every muscle of core stability, leg stability, and strength, um, was a very intensive um, practice. But I will say, like after like literally day one, I was like, okay, I get to wake up tomorrow and like give it my everything to try to get myself into the physical shape that I want to be in. And I can control that. Like I can control the energy and the attitude and the outlook to try to do that. Like that I can control. And that
Yeah.
was like a very reassuring
That's a
thing
fabulous
to change
attitude.
my life.
It's amazing. Just amazing.
Wow. Well, then you come home and you face a new life as a blind person. Who was helpful to you? How did you wrap your arms around this?
Um, I so I, so many people. I mean, I'm a lucky boy for a lot of reasons. I think my support network, first and foremost, is what makes me exceptionally lucky, and that starts with my family and the people that are closest to me, and my fiance that was at my side every single day. My
Mm.
mom, who was there every single day with me in the hospital. Um, my brother, my sister, Jess's parents, her brother, our unit came together. You know, there was a lot of shitty things that happened with all this, but there was a lot of really, really beautiful things, and one
Mm.
of the really beautiful things was the way that everyone came together. So there was not a single second when I was in the hospital or outside of the hospital that I didn't feel like I had 1000% support, or people that were thinking of me or in my corner. Like that was never once a doubt on my mind. And I know that I'm exceptionally, fortunate for that. So that was the first, I would say, like layer of support. I'll say that making sure I had the right medical team in place was another critical success factor. We had some really great physicians during my time at the hospital. We also had some really horrible physicians,
Mm.
and making sure you have the right care team that not only has the right expertise, but has the right bedside manner, empathy, and thoughtfulness, I think is such a critical
Critical. Yeah.
Yeah.
success
Yeah.
factor for any patient. I think I was really lucky that I had my father to look at, Jess's father to look at, who are incredibly brilliant experts at what they do, but are also just like the most loving, kind, and thoughtful human beings that put, whether it's the patient or their children or whoever it is they're dealing with, they put them in front of self. And that was my like,
Right.
view of doctors. And so when we had the, when we didn't have that, it was pretty stark. So making sure we had the right physicians in place, and we went on a bit of a journey to make sure that was secured. But that was the next piece. Getting mental health support was a huge step for me. Finding ultimately a trauma therapist that was, for me, a perfect match. This was my first foray into mental health support and therapy, and I could not be more thankful and appreciative to the support that that has provided. And then I think the last piece has been, community. So whether it's being able to meet and learn from other folks that are part of the blind community, or other disability advocates, I've had such fortunate access to those kinds of things. And even obviously you all had the chance to and get to do this every day. People like Brooke Eby, people like Amy Purdy, people like author named Andrew Leland, who wrote a book about his journey through blindness. I just started listening to as many podcasts and reading as many audiobooks as I could get through. I think I read like 42 audiobooks from July when I was released from the hospital till January when I started back up work. So I just consumed as much as I could to like keep my brain stimulated and focus my efforts and mental energy on recovery.
And I think it helps so much to know there's a community out there for you and that you're not alone, that you've got this wonderful cushion of support. And I think that it can give you the strength to keep plowing through and do what you need to do to get the job done.
Absolutely.
Who wouldn't want to be there for you, Zach?
Absolutely.
You radiate.
That's
you
so
just
true.
radiate so much grace.
Oh, Beth, beautifully
it
put.
is in there. It's, they're just attracted to you, Zach, because of what you radiate. So I want to ask you, you talked about, you listen to podcasts about blindness. You go home as a blind person. Now, how do you manage that?
Yeah.
How did you learn how to function? Cathy and I both have visual impairments, and it's a big hurdle.
Huge.
It's a big hurdle. Hard.
Absolutely. I think everyone has obviously so I think the first thing for me was education, at least as it relates to the blindness. I think everyone has such different visual impairment, and there's such a diverse spectrum of how visual impairment can present. And I think the first thing was just like gaining an appreciation for that. So for me, I don't have any central vision. I only have my peripheral vision, and it's a blurry sort of field of view, and sort of colors are challenging. I'd say the other piece has been, for me, my hearing improved to a certain point, but didn't really progress that much further. And so, I lost most of the hearing in my right ear and a moderate level in my left ear. And so, constant tinnitus had played a role, as well as just like everything sounding so muddy. And so for me, a big challenge, at least with the vision and hearing, was really just like how to navigate the combination of both of those things. For me, obviously, like I wasn't able to rely on the hearing to, compensate for the visual impairment or vice versa. And so, a lot of people will tell you like the hospital is the toughest part of it. And if you get through the hospital experience, like there's only way up from there. In a lot of ways that was true, but I actually feel like the month or month and a half once I got out of the hospital was the hardest part, because I could walk with a walker or with a cane at that point. So physically I was still progressing, but I could not do anything for myself apart from brush my teeth and shave my face. Like I couldn't cook, I couldn't use my phone, I couldn't make a phone call, I couldn't there was a lot that for me as a like independent person,
Sure.
it was it was so frustrating to have to ask and rely on Jess and my mom and my siblings who obviously have like, I mean, I could like go on and on about the concept of unconditional love. And I think I've learned firsthand from Jess and my family what like unconditional love truly means. But to have to ask and to have to need that level of like pervasive support was so frustrating. And so um I think for me it was like there was very much a mental journey of like you need to be patient with yourself. You've been patient
Mm,
through so much, the
right.
literal like
Right.
hours and hours and hours of testing. Like you
Yes.
got through that, like apply that here. And so
Uh-huh.
for me, it was like, okay, like I'm gonna be patient with the blind stuff. Let me focus on like my physical health and get myself improve my balance, improve my walking ability, and then start to build my muscle back and core strength. And so I sort of like piecemealed it into like, okay, I'm gonna do my physical piece, and then I'm gonna figure out whatever it is I need to figure out. And so
Right.
once it came to adapting to my visual impairment and my hearing impairment, um, fortunately, there's so many resources out there. So I was registered with the New York State Commission for the Blind as someone who's legally blind. And doing that got me access to a tremendous wealth of resources to
Hmm.
learn all the adaptive skills, as you both know, that you need to learn to be a independent blind person. So
Right.
in the absence of that, I just started like putzing around with my phone. Like I started using Siri a lot. Siri
Hmm.
became
Yeah.
my girlfriend.
Yeah.
Um, and then, VoiceOver is sort of the next hurdle. VoiceOver is the screen reading software for the iPhone and all of the other Apple products. And there's a bit of a learning curve, but like I'm pretty tech savvy. And so once I learned like how to play around with that, I just started like doing it more. And then, it was sort of at the point where like physically I was getting to where I needed to be so I could devote like my mental energy to like, okay, I'm going to spend an hour every day. I'm going to learn a different app, or I'm going to learn how to check my email today, or I'm going to learn how to do, surf on like the websites, on my phone and just like trying to do things one by one. And I think that's what it ended up being was just like, okay, like let me just take the next step that I think is right. And you just like keep taking those steps. And
Mhm.
suddenly had access then to a orientation mobility coach who could teach me how to use the white cane and how to walk outside safely, how to cross the street safely, how to take the subway safely. And then it was my at-home skills teacher who could teach me how to cook with more safe techniques. Or my technology teacher who has very much become my like blind sensei. And I call him my like Jedi master. He himself is he is he's completely blind, and he's like the expert on adaptive technology on the
Technology.
computer. And so, yeah, shout out to Fred Quick. He
Yeah.
has been an amazing mentor and friend of mine. He taught me how to use the screen reading software called JAWS for my computer to give me
Yeah.
full use of my computer. And that was very much like the journey. It was just like one step at a time, take the next step. Um, and as you know, like the more you keep walking, the more you keep doing, it just reinforces those behaviors and those learnings and those accomplishments. And I think the old lessons that I had learned of like keep that positive outlook and like work your butt off and good things will happen um, is what came to fruition for me.
Beautiful.
So it seems, Zach, that this sense of optimism, which you embody, from what you're saying, you obviously have this wonderful support group, but you give yourself grace. You give yourself permission to fail and get back up and learn. and you're not so hard on yourself. I think that's something that we all need to take away as we struggle with whatever life throws at us, that we may not get it right at first, but give yourself the chance and try it again. And so, as you said, all right, today I'm going to learn how to do voiceover. Tomorrow, I'm going to learn how to answer my email. You set yourself on a path, and I'm sure you didn't get it right the first time, but by the end of the day, you had it. And what a valuable lesson to our listeners.
It really
what a
is.
valuable lesson for me, Zach, is all I can say.
For me too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I still don't get it right. And I think that lesson of giving yourself grace is one that I am still learning. I think I am, and I think a lot of people can be hard on themselves. And I had, fortunately, people in my life, Jess comes to mind, my friend Ermias, my friend Matt, who, were on me. And these were people that I look up to, personally, professionally, and to hear from them, like, dude, like, you're being way too hard on yourself, and like, be patient and like, give it time. These things take time. I think hearing it from someone you respect and admire helped open my ears to that concept. And so, but it certainly didn't come naturally.
You work at it. Well, Zach, I just have a question. You're back at work. And what kind of accommodations did Harry's make for you? Did they keep your job open during your recovery process? How did it work?
Yeah, so I had such incredible support from my boss, my coworkers, really the entire leadership team at Harry's, who each in some respect had reached out to us. My boss like came to see me in the hospital.
Oh, wow.
Truly was like they showed up. And so yes, they kept my role open. They sort of tag team to like fill the gaps. And then, as I was approaching coming back, I had been talking a lot with my boss, and they had been recruiting for this new role. And it was one that I actually had a lot of interest in, and was a lot less technical, a lot more relationship oriented. And so I actually started back in that new role. And from an accommodations perspective, so it's interesting because I think I'm still like figuring out how to be a blind person, given it's only been like a year. But for me, it was like, all right, give me all I need is the screen reading software, and I'll figure out the rest of this stuff. And I would say there was a pretty heavy learning curve at first. But again, it was just like, okay, I'm going to figure this out. And I think that what I've learned is like, people with disabilities become problem solvers. And it's funny because like in consulting, there's a lot of pride in being someone who can be a critical thinker and solve problems. And yet the problems that disabilities or folks with disabilities face on a daily basis, like they just are like so much more profound than any kind of business challenge. Like a business problem pales in comparison to the things that people with physical or mental or obviously any other kind of sensory disability have to deal with. And I think that gave me a lot of like heart in this process. And so it was relying upon the skills that I had before and supplementing the skills that I needed to supplement to do all the things that I needed to do, and to be as like capable, independent, and high achieving as I wanted to be. Yeah.
Can I interject for a minute, Zach? I just want to make sure that everyone in our listening audience, we have a lot of women in our listening audience that may not know about Harry's. And I wanted to say, I know I've converted my husband, my brother-in-law is a Harry's user. So Harry's they make razors. They make quality razors by subscription. They come in the mail. So people like my husband who forget to buy razors, you don't have to worry because it comes with the shaving cream. And unbelievably, they undercut the competition. So it was a startup company. It's a wonderful company. And all I can say from what you described, Zach, we hear so much about corporate greed, and you have talked about a company with a heart.
That's
And I
right.
wanted to give your company a shout out for coming to visit you, for holding your job, for giving you the accommodations that you needed in order for you to thrive at what you do. So
It's
bravo
wonderful.
to Harry's. Bravo.
Absolutely. There's another part of your life right now that I would love to talk about. And I know it's very important to you, and that is blind baseball. Can you tell our listeners about your team and the league?
Absolutely. So I learned about blind baseball from actually a couple of different sources. Fortunately for me, there's another person in my building. His name is Mike Walsh, who plays blind baseball. I actually met him through our building group chat. He had posted about a fundraiser for the U.S. Blind Baseball Association. And we had seen another person in the building with a cane. And so we reached out to him, and he was kind enough to meet up with me and told me about the things he does. And, he had mentioned blind baseball. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I used to play baseball. And he was like, you played college baseball? Like, you need to join our team.
Right. You're the ringer.
And so I was like, yeah, absolutely. And then going to Lighthouse Guild to receive occupational therapy and various low vision and blind training skills. I had a wonderful therapist named Alice Massa who also told me about the blind baseball team. And so got involved with this group of amazing, kind, athletic, and inspiring individuals. There's about 30 of us here in New York that play a game called blind baseball. So it started with just like practicing in the gym at the JCC on the Upper West Side in December, and that's translated into a team. So our group is sort of like a feeder group for basically the Team USA blind baseball team. And so every year there's a World Cup. I believe this is the second now or third year that they've had the World Cup of blind baseball, which will be hosted in just outside London at the end of September.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So I will be part of a group that has the opportunity to represent our country and USA in
fabulous.
the World
So
Baseball.
exciting.
That's really
Blind Baseball
fabulous.
Cup. Yeah,
That
absolutely.
is fabulous.
That is wonderful. Zach, you are a wow. You are an inspiration. And I mean, hats off to you, or in your case, baseball caps off to you. I mean, this is just incredible.
So, Zach, we've included a clip from the new documentary about your baseball team in our show notes. So, spoiler alert, Zach is the star of the new documentary. So I want everyone to take a look at the clip from the blind baseball team, and please support the documentary and please support Zach's team. This is so exciting.
So
Thank
exciting. Zach, you are a wow, and you are an inspiration. Do you have any parting advice for our listeners facing medical challenges or any type of rare disease as to ways they can tackle their challenges?
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you first of all for the platform and the chance to speak about this. So being able to hear other folks' stories is always something that I found to be heartening. I've been thinking a lot about the concept of like what it means to suffer and go through adversity. And I think the reality is like it's part of the human experience. Like every human being goes through challenges, um, big and small, every day. We as humans, like I think that's just part of like one of the elemental things that we experience as human beings. And I think it lends such an opportunity to feel those things, whether it's grief or pain or loss and sadness. I think it's really important to like feel those feelings because it makes experiencing the happy and joyful things in life like so much more enjoyable. Um and it could be big things or small things, right? Like we've talked about some of the big things, like blind baseball for me has been such a big, beautiful thing. My fiance, my family, um, things that just bring me constant joy. But it could be as little as like a delicious meal that you make for yourself. And for me, like the first time I made a meal, I was like, damn, like this is good. And I made it and like I can do
Oh,
this. Or
oh,
like I think it doesn't have to be big things. It can be, really like enjoying the little things in life. I think about when I literally couldn't shower in the hospital for 2 months. I think I had like 3 showers that they had to give me, and now I get to shower every single day. And every day I'm like, oh my
oh.
God, like this is the best feeling, like to be able to like shower. Like what a blessing. So I think that like knowing that like yes, life can really suck and be so painful and like the feelings that go along with that can be so profound, but equally profound can be the feelings of happiness and joy and love and fulfillment. And I think like never losing sight of that is so important. There's so much in life that we can't control. And yet there is a lot in life that we can, and we can control the way we want to think about things and the attitude that we want to try to adopt. We can control the people that we surround ourselves um, and be with on a daily basis. And we can control how much effort we want to put into whatever it is we want to do. And I think those for me have been like the ingredients, certainly for my recovery journey, but also how I want to spend the rest of my life.
Thank you so much for allowing us to bring you into our world and our life because we're better for having spent time with you, Zach. You've taught us,
Absolutely.
really, you've taught us how not to just survive, but thrive through your thoughtful words. And I am touched in such a profound way. But you rock me, Zach. So all I can say is God bless you, Zach, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth, and thank you, Cathy. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of It Happened to Me. We encourage you to learn more at ithappenedtomepod.com. Please use the contact form on our website to submit your guest suggestions, comments, questions, ideas, and feedback for the show. You can also email us directly at ithappenedtomepod@gmail.com. We would really appreciate it if you can leave us a 5-star rating and review on your podcast app like Apple or Spotify. This helps others in the rare disease and medical challenge community find us. It Happened to Me is created and hosted by Cathy Gillenhorn and Beth Glassman. I'm Keir Deneen from DNA Today, and I serve as our executive producer and marketing lead. Amanda Andrioli is our associate producer. Ashlyn Anokian is our graphic designer. And remember, it happened to me. I'm not alone, and neither are you.